So I really like to take the time to speak about not processes so much, but more like intention, right? I'm obsessed with intention. But and you just recently, just 2 days ago, we released Parallels, which is the fourth BLAKMOTH release on Errorgrid. I think it's you're the one who releases the most. You're the most prolific amongst us, which actually brings me to a question, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? Is that just a matter of process, or is that just the way you do everything? Because it takes me 3 years of sweat and pain and, labor, and then throwing everything away 10 times before I can come up with an EP. But you just like keep creating. Like, what is that does it?
I think, one could say, oh, it's passion. I think everybody's passionate about their work regardless of how.
Are you saying I have no passion?
Exactly. That's what, but
You're
I think what it comes down to is focus, to be honest. When I sit down and I create, I try to be as efficient as I possibly can, because when I have an idea in my head, I want to be able to sit down and just get the idea out. And so when it comes to designing my rack, or setting things up in the DAW, I always have everything templated out or ready to go, and I know exactly what sounds I want, where to get them from. And so when I have an idea, I can sit down and just boom, get it done, hit record, and ready to go. And I'm creating every day. Like every day I sit down, I have these ideas. I could be sitting watching TV and I'll hear something and I'm like, no, let's go make some music.
Wow. And so those ideas, do they make it into a final release, or are they just like doodles that lie around? And
a lot of times they are doodles. But what I end up doing is I record my sessions. So if I sit down and I'm noodling around and I hear something I like, I'll just hit record, and maybe like an hour later, after all this recording, I go back and I listen to it and I find pieces that I like, or sometimes that whole piece ends up being chopped up into one whole album.
Yeah.
I know, like,
there's
if you really tracks have some similarity to them, and a lot of it's because it was one track that transitioned to a different idea as I was going, and I just kind of broke it up.
So there's a lot of immediacy between the idea, like that first inflection point, and then actually making it happen, right? You does that mean you always carry something with you, like when you're not at home, like some kind of like a music sketch pad or something, so that the idea doesn't get lost?
I have a lot of like little apps and stuff that I have on my phone, or sometimes I'll hum little things and just try to keep it going. But that immediacy is so important that if I'm not here to work on it, it gets lost anyway, because it's there's a lot of emotion into it. So it's what I'm feeling at the time. So by the time if I sit down to work on something, I'm not feeling that, it's not going to come off the same. So I kind of let it go. Most of these albums happen in a day because of that. So if I'm in a vibe or a mood, I get up in the morning, and usually that's what happens. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, what, got an idea, and I'll sit here at the rack all day till it's done.
Oh man, that's so great. It goes really to show how individual the process of creation is, right? In your case, in a day, you create an album in a day, which for me is completely like out of question. And there's like no weight of judgment in this. It just shows the spectrum, which is so amazing. You put together something. I recall you call it a spirit box, right? A spirit box. Maybe we can get into this later.
Yeah.
But you just also choose your brushes and your pens and your canvases very intentionally in terms of that immediacy, right? So. Maybe you can like tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like you have a very unique approach from going from the idea to the execution when it comes to your tools.
Yeah, I know like a lot of my friends, especially as being in the modular community, everybody's like, oh, you got to get a PAMS, or oh, you got to get this, and I'm like, no,
you got to get PAMS. You got to get.
There's certain stuff that there's certain things that I know in my creative process that I need to have, or that works best, and so. I try to fine tune those things. And a lot of times, you start out with something that you think is going to work out, and, it does for the most part. But again, I need that immediacy. So like I could have a module that, does that thing but I need a little bit more. And so, you upgrade and you change things. And that's been the whole process with the spirit boxes. I've just wanted to constantly evolve it so that it made the creative process more efficient each time. It's like, okay, I finished this album. What did I not like about it? Or what was it that I wanted to hear, but I couldn't create? And so I go to, look at new modules or new equipment. That's the thought process that goes in. It's never, the gas is never, oh, that new module is really cool. Let me get that.
Yeah.
How can it help me achieve the sound that I wanted to achieve in the last album that I couldn't?
So you actually revisit your albums that you finished with a critical eye to improve upon them. That's very interesting. So you tell yourself, what was a hardship, kind of like the limitation that I experienced that I wish I did not have had. Although, the interesting thing is here that limitations also lead to those albums, right? Yep. All those things you did in the past are results of those limitations. So you also see this all as a path of progression, of like development. Towards what? What are you developing towards?
Sound. There's this. The music is in my head. It's there. It's ready to go, and it's been there for a long time. Like all the past albums, not to like tear them down, but they weren't there. Like with Parallels, it's very close. It's very close. So this is the sound that I've been trying to get.
And I felt that. You know what? It's funny you say that. I know it sounds lame, and I mean, whatever. I don't care what people will say about this, but my immediate reaction was like, this is his most personal work. It just felt like something within him finally found a way of saying what it wanted to say.
Right.
And your tools, your spirit boxes, probably like the way I understand it, and I hope someone can take something away from that, is that it's about finding the perfect tool that becomes almost invisible in being as short as possible between the idea and the execution. Like the tool should almost not color the idea. Right. It should bring it out in its most transparent way, the way you hear it in your head, right?
Got to be a very intimate relationship. It's a dialogue. So when I sit down, I say, "Hey, this is the idea I have. Let's make this idea." I should be able to sit down and make that idea, and not be like, "Okay, what plugins am I going to use? Am I going to use? Do I want to use this ADSR? Do I want to? I shouldn't feel that way at all, because by the time you figure all that stuff out, the idea is lost, or it's diluted.
Yeah.
With the way I have it set up, I can just literally just sit down and just go.
What was the idea that necessitated that process? Like, where did that come from? A desire to do it this way?
Just love for like scores and cinema and just those sounds. As everybody knows, I'm working hard at this composing thing, and I felt like my music should reflect that. I'm a big fan of people like Hens and Cloak and that stuff like that, because it's a cinematic vibe, but still music, that you can sit down and listen to. And I wanted my music to be that, and not just, hey, here's some beats, or here's some patterns or polyrhythms and some noise. It's got to go deeper than that. And, I've always said, music should be a destination. So if my music doesn't take you anywhere, then I didn't do my job. I just made some noise, and that was what the goal was to get it to a point where when you listen to this, you feel like there's a story being told, or there's a place that you're, or it makes you feel a certain way, versus just, I can get into this groove that's really cool.
Listening to this one, I really felt like it was, to go back to what you said at the beginning, it was an emotional one for you. And maybe it's just in closing, because to me, emotion and music are so closely linked, like you cannot take them apart. Otherwise, it's just craftsmanship, right? It's just
Hmm?
craft work.
Right.
What was the underlying emotional that kind of guided you this time, or that you kind of hope to convey through parallels, like kind of like the emotional takeaway? If it's therapeutic, what is it healing? What is it doing?
Um, a lot of the things I commonly think about is just the shadow self. So, if you can embrace the dark of something and understand it rather than fear it, then you're on the path of success as far as your own mental well-being.
Mm.
Excuse me. And that's usually how I try to look at things. I know my music seems a whole lot of dark, but that's the point. It's like if you're finding enjoyment in it and you're connecting with it and it's emotional, and you're not feeling down about it, it's making you feel good. That's the same concept to me, and that's what it's trying to convey.
I think that is so important what you just said, and I hope that it's the same for a lot of artists, that express themselves through that dark art. It's people oftentimes take it at face value and think like, oh, it's a dark soul, it's a broken
Right.
person behind it. But really, the therapeutic aspect of releasing yourself and your self belief through dark sounds. I feel like you can feel it in parallels. Like you can feel that we are watching from the outside in to someone who's releasing something that's very personal. That makes it for me the most personal of your releases. I mean,
And it's hoping that like somebody out there is like going through the same thing or feeling the same way, and you listen to the music and it kind of you connect with it, and that's my biggest hope, is that somebody's out there connecting with the music and feeling better because of the music, or understanding or feeling that same emotion, like, oh wow, I can feel what he's going through, I'm going through that, that's cool. And that's the goal. I think that's the job of an artist, to be honest. We're not just entertainers, we're here to provide that therapy or that escape from the world. Obnoxious at this point.